We're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on your time zone, wherever you are. Hello, happy Mentorship Monday. I'm Brandy Park. I'm the Vice President of the Women of UGA Leadership Council, and I'm really excited to be here with you today, especially after our game on Saturday, the big win that we have, which is super exciting. And I think everyone's with me. If we could have seen Alabama and both Florida lose at the same time, that would have been great, but I'll take what we got. So. But this is our second installment of the Fall Mentorship Monday. And our featured guest today is Germonique Ulmer, and it's going to be moderated by none other than Frances Busey. And we are thrilled to have all of you here with us today. You know, one of the upsides of COVID is this used to be a smaller, group that was in person, and it was limited to headcount. But now we've been able, through the virtual world, to open it up to people not just throughout the United States, but internationally as well. So that's been an unexpected upside of being in the virtual environment. So I want to share a little bit about this program, which is a signature program for Mentorship Monday. It was established in 2018, and it's a professional development series featuring notable UGA alumni. And each installment of the fall series, the series we're in right now, will offer new perspectives with a keynote speaker or a panel style reflection, and it will have a question answer session afterwards. So typically it's an hour long for our speaker, and we can allow for questions, a Q&A session during that through our chat feature. And then afterwards we have a half-hour breakout session where we're able to review the information we had and also network with fellow women of UGA, which I think is the most exciting part. So we're very excited as the Women of UGA to continue to provide quality networking and professional development, even in this virtual format. So I'd also like to thank all of you who have donated to the Women of UGA Scholarship Fund. And thanks to supporters like all of you, we've established not only a Georgia Commitment Scholarship, but also an endowed scholarship. So Kwanzaa, who is our secretary on the Women of UGA Council, she's going to post in the chat a link if you would like to contribute to help us continue these need-based funds and scholarships. So please, join us this fiscal year as we increase our giving to impact outstanding scholars and help break down those financial barriers for so many students that have that as an issue financially for a quality education at the University of Georgia. So you can go to the website, or like I said, Kwanzaa's going to post that in the chat for you guys, so you guys can see that there. Now, I'd like to introduce our moderator. And I want to tell you a little bit about Frances. She's a 2006 graduate of the UGA Franklin College of Arts and Sciences. And as of just last month, she is a 2021 graduate of the Mary Frances Early College of Education. She is currently the Senior Director of Alumni Outreach for the UGA Office of Alumni Relations, and she works with the board of directors, all of the affinity groups, including Women of UGA, and all of our signature events. So she wears a lot of hats, that is for sure. So Mentorship Monday, ladies, I would like to turn it over to none other than Frances.
Thank you, Brandy. I appreciate that kind introduction. I am extremely excited to be here today to moderate this session with Germonique. Germonique Ulmer is a 1996 graduate from the Grady College of Journalism and Mass Communications. She's a public affairs professional with an amazing 20-year career working in both local government and the nonprofit sector, both in DC and LA. So I was fortunate to get to know Germonique because when I was working on my master's degree, I chose her and she agreed to be my mentor through the UGA Mentor Program. So if you have not registered to be a mentor to our UGA students, please do so. We're going to throw that link in the chat as well. So every time I left a conversation with Germonique, I was energized and ready to take on the world. So I'm hoping every single one of you feel that same way today as you leave this session. And we are both extremely excited to talk to you about owning your power in negotiations. So with that, I'm going to welcome Germonique.
Thank you so much, Frances. And hello, everybody. I think there's a couple friends in the audience. I've been getting text messages. I've been looking forward to this conversation since Frances posed the idea to me, and I'm just so thrilled to be here. Like Frances said, I've been working in the field of communications and public affairs for over 20 years. I graduated from the University of Georgia in '96, go Dogs, and immediately moved to the Washington, DC area, where I had hoped to start my career in television news as a producer, but that didn't happen. And I didn't want to leave Washington, D.C. I had fallen in love with that city. And if you know anything about television news, you got to cut your teeth in a small little town somewhere, not a top 10 market. So I decided to stay in Washington and find my way in this city that I had fallen in love with, and started working in the nonprofit field. And I started advocating for myself pretty early on in my career. So I was working as an administrative assistant, doing admin work, and asked to be moved into the communications department because I knew that's where I wanted to build my career. And then while I was in that role, after a couple years, advocated for a promotion for myself and was told no. So rather than sit there and you know, be sad about the situation and not get what I want, I was very, very fortunate to have another offer on the table. And I told them that I was going to walk away because it wasn't a good fit for me no longer. And I just encourage you, and I hope that we will be able to have a conversation about how we all can begin to advocate for ourselves in our career. So that wonderful opportunity that I got next was to work at the mayor's office in Washington, D.C. I was the deputy press secretary for the mayor of the nation's capital at a very, very young age. And it is where I cut my teeth in all things career, from learning the world of my field, but also how to navigate politics. And I'm not just talking about politics in the capital P perspective, but the politics of being a woman professional. And worked there for many years and decided in that moment, when I found out that there was not going to be another, my mayor was not going to run again, that I wanted to move to another job. And this is where I began to really see myself, again, advocating for myself. So was really just been a career that I can't wait to kind of talk more about as Frances and I go through these questions. But hopefully along the way, you'll see how I began to think about negotiations and the ways in which you advance your career and really begin to follow your path and your passion as you do your work. So thank you, Frances. I can't wait to talk more.
Awesome. So when you and I met, and I've seen this quote a lot of times on LinkedIn and Instagram and different places, and it says, don't, you know, commit to a calling and a purpose, not an institution or a person. And when you and I were talking, that was one of the things that, you know, you said was very important to you, and you encouraged me to do, was to commit to a purpose or a calling. Now, you have a deep commitment to building strong communities. So can you walk us through your career transitions and talk to us a little bit about how that purpose has guided you through the choices you've made?
Yeah, so where I left off, just as in my intro, was at the point where I started to realize that I was not going to be happy in my career if I wasn't doing work that I was really passionate about, that I was not working for someone who I was inspired by as a leader, that I was not working for a place where I believed in the mission and the vision of that organization. And so I certainly believed in the mission of what the mayor of Washington, D.C. was doing to change that city during a time of rapid change. But I had exhausted the time there. It was one of those jobs where you work 24 hours a day. And so I knew that if I was going to leave an amazing opportunity working for the mayor of Washington, D.C., it had to be something that would drive me. It had to be something that I felt like I could really make a measurable difference in the world. And so that's when I moved to the Center for Community Change, which is this national nonprofit organization that does community organizing work all over the country, working in communities of color. And it really was where I felt like I needed to be in that moment. And, you know, oftentimes I think we move for jobs for money, and certainly that's important for you to grow in your career and to also grow your salary. But I never let money drive my decisions, because I knew that no matter how much money that I made, I was not going to be.
Thank you for calling SBA's Disaster Assistance Customer Service Support.
Sorry, was I the only one who heard that? I knew that wasn't going to be enough to keep me to stay. And so I would often just put the role and the position and the opportunity to grow ahead of whatever the salary it was that I would be offered. And had a desire to have great mentorship in the roles that I would take as well. So always looking at that leader, the person who was hiring me, to see what can I learn from that person? How is my my role here going to be valuable, but also how am I going to grow in my career? And what is it that I'm going to learn from that position? And I've always done that. My next role as a senior director of public affairs at the National Trust for Historic Preservation, again, national organization, they came to me saying that they had a commitment to really make a difference. They were, the National Trust is a 70-year-old organization that was a membership organization that was really just about growing a membership. And they decided they really wanted to start to grow a movement. And for me, that was what I wanted to do. And that's why I joined that organization. And then finally, in my current role with the Lucas Museum, never worked for a museum before, never thought I would ever work for a museum. But what's different about the Lucas Museum is that the founders of that museum was very clear that they wanted to build an institution in a part of Los Angeles that often didn't have access to these types of cultural institutions. And that I want to be a part of that. And so it's just guided my career every step of the way, knowing that I have a certain commitment to certain communities and that I have a passion around that. And that's what's going to make me stay in a place.
Amazing to hear. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay, so everyone here today has is coming from a different, sector in work and, industry. So the one thing we all have in common is we are women. So if you can talk to us a little bit, how can we as women truly own our power in these negotiations as we're going throughout our career?
So that is a great question. And it's kind of why we're here, right? Women, we often put ourselves last to the people in our lives. I really kind of reflected on that. We are society's nurturers. And if we can start to think of self-care as not only pampering ourselves, but also advocating for yourself in your professional life, I think more women would do it. It is self-care to be in a place that you spend half of your life where you feel like you are valued, that you can grow, that there is opportunity for you, that you can show your worth. And I think we don't do enough of that as women, where we feel like advocating for ourselves, negotiating for the best opportunity is actually self-care. And so what I always say is, what do I need to make this situation work for me? What about this job in the negotiation is going to make this situation work for me? And then start with that confidence. So it's like, it's easy to say, oh, have confidence, right? I know it's like easy to say, hard to do. But I always think about, okay, what am I good at? I'm good at what I do. Actually, I'm very good at what I do. So start with that. I'm good at what I'm do. But then you got to support it with research. So I have these skills. I have this experience. This is what the market says some of my skills and experience is worth. Why can't I ask for what I'm worth? So that's the other piece, is doing that research to know what your skills and experience are worth. And then finally, I say, you've got to understand intimately what the job that you're applying for requires. And the way that you do that is to make sure that when you're interviewing for a role, that is not just about that organization making an assessment of you, but you are making an assessment of that organization. And you are intimately learning what is going to be required for you in that job when you're going through the interview process. Making sure that you're taking those notes so that you can use that as your leverage when you start negotiations. So you're understanding things like, what is the budget of the organization? What is the budget of that department or that area? What is the exact scope of the role? How many direct reports might you have, or none at all? Where do you sit in the organization? Is there going to be travel requirements? What is the size of the team? What are the key performance metrics? Understanding all of that so you can draw on that information when you get to the part of the negotiation, because you can only negotiate, based on your knowledge. And I will say this multiple times during this conversation, there's nothing to negotiate until there's an offer. Bottom line, don't negotiate yourself out of a job before you have an offer. And oftentimes I think women do that. So it's also allowing for the offer to come to you rather than start to bring in things that have nothing to do with with that moment to start to kick yourself out of the role. I hope that answered the question.
Yes, definitely. And that kind of leads us into the next one for sure. So, we as women sometimes are, giving life at the same time that we're talking to people about jobs. And that is something that men don't have to worry with when they're going into a job interview. And right now, some people are calling it the COVID baby boom. And then on top of that, we have this great resignation that's happening. So there's a lot of turnover. So there's lots of opportunity right now. So how would you encourage all females, but then also, expecting mothers to approach a job search during this time?
So it's a great question, and I love this question. And I will say what I just said, there's nothing to negotiate until you have an offer. And I think you want to make sure that they want you first before you start to even thinking about bringing in something around family issues. I've always believed that, first of all, no man walks into an interview and talk about, oh, and I've got these obligations at home and these things like that. We tend to do that. And I'm like, I like to be treated like a man when it comes to negotiation. Treat me like a man, and I'm going to show up like a man. And it's also helpful to know the laws in your state. And California is one of those states where I know that I can walk into an interview 9 months pregnant and they can't say a single thing about my physical condition or ask any questions about that. So it's also helpful to know the laws of your state. And I'm no lawyer, so I won't go into that, but I would say that there are protections against that very thing. So know that you are protected in being able to have a conversation that is strictly focused on your professional experience. And that's what those conversations are meant to be, strictly focused on your professional experience. And then you get to that point. I mean, you can have an elderly family member at home, you can have 10 kids at home. That is not why they're interviewing you. They're interviewing you because they see you as a potential fit for their company, and you want to make sure that they see all that you can bring from your professional background so that they get to the point where they want to make you an offer, rather than negotiating yourself out of a job when you don't have to do that. And I think that is one of our biggest challenges, that we tend to, as women, talk about all the other things, when in these situations, we must focus on the number one thing, which is, how do I convince them that I am the right candidate for that job? Now, I say that with somewhat of a heavy heart, because how do we normalize being able to bring our whole self as women to conversations around jobs, right? How do we normalize that? Like, why is it not okay for me to come in and be like, yep, got 3 kids at home, got all this going on, but that's not going to factor into a hiring manager's decision to hire you. Would love that to be the case, but we're getting there, I think, but we're not quite there. But I think the way that we begin to normalize this is having more women in leadership who are going to be making those decisions. And I'm not saying all women are the same. We've all been in those situations where we have women bosses who can be just as bad as men when it comes to things like that. But I believe that having women and men who respect the layers we have as people, as individuals, and that these conversations around jobs and negotiations really need to be focused on the role at hand and what people can deliver. So your job is to convince them that you have the skills and you are the best candidate for the job. And when they make that offer, then that's when you need to start to think about, well, then how do I bring in, if you are a woman who is pregnant and you are concerned about within the first 90 days or 4 months of you being in the role, that you're going to have to leave. So I always encourage people who've come to me and asked me these questions is, do you have an offer? If you don't have an offer, there's nothing to talk about. But when you have that offer, then you know that they are interested in you. And I will tell you that when an organization has made you an offer, they are just as invested as you are. And why do I say that? Because women on this call who have been hiring managers, you know the investment that you put in finding that great candidate. Great candidates don't come all the time. They're hard to find, particularly in this market. It's hard to find a great candidate. So when an organization has committed to making you an offer, they've done all the background checks, they've invested into the work, they've sifted through tons and tons of resumes. They've probably even told other colleagues in the organization, wow, I found this great candidate. She is awesome. We cannot wait to make her an offer. So know that they are invested at that point. And this is when you become a peer in the negotiations. This is when you start to say, all right, we've got an offer on the table. Here's what I want to tell you. I am delighted that I'm introducing another member to my family at whatever point. And I'd like to work with you. I'm thrilled about this offer. And I'd like to work with you about what the plan is that I'm thinking about to make sure that this transition is going to be an easy one for all of us. I really want this job. You've made me this offer because you know I'm the best candidate, and I remain the best candidate for this role. And this is how I see this playing out. It's all about having that plan. It's all about continuing to have the confidence in yourself. And again, not negotiating yourself out of the running before there's even an offer on the table. And having that clarity around how you're going to be able to deliver, what's going to be the performance metrics that you're going to set for yourself within that first year, to show to them that you're committed to delivering on. And the reason why they made you the offer in the first place is, in my belief, the way to approach this. Again, if you hear nothing else, there's not an offer, there's nothing to negotiate until there's an offer.
So Germonique, I love that about being a peer in the negotiation. So again, we face different challenges when we're in these negotiations. So what are some of those tools and tactics that you recommend for this group of women to utilize to overcome some of those challenges? So sometimes it's just, I tell myself I need Germonique in the back of my head saying, these different things, because I think this is such wonderful advice. But what are those tools and tactics?
So here's something that I learned that has really served me well. I have to say, it's been a while since I've kind of gotten a job in the traditional way, but I think you often hear people say things like, give me your current salary, give me your salary range. Like, they're trying to figure out and weed you out. And one of the things that I've found that's been extremely successful, that is a tool that I encourage everyone to use, is when they ask you what your current salary is, you tell them it's competitive. My current salary, it's competitive. Don't say a number. Stay away from numbers. My current salary is competitive. When they ask you your salary range, it's negotiable. Again, stay away from numbers. My salary range, negotiable. Never say a number. Women, never say a number. So that's one of the tools that I often use, and I've seen to be extremely successful in my ability to achieve the salary that I've been able to achieve in my career. Timing is everything. That's the other tool. So again, don't negotiate yourself out of an offer. Don't start talking about numbers. Don't start talking about, I want, 3 days off every month, different things like that until you have an offer. So just make sure that you're being thoughtful about the timing around things that you start to ask for in that moment. Don't start to give information about, basically don't negotiate, until there's an offer. So that's the other tool. And then when I talk about being a peer in the process, being that peer helps you to appear savvy rather than difficult. So what you're doing is saying, okay, well, let's look at what you all have told me about the scope of this job. You told me that this is the budget. You told me that this is the team. You told me that all of these things. So given all of that, let's talk through what are some of the key things that you want to see achieved here. Based on what you've shared with me, and based on what I know, I really believe that this is the right amount of money for this role. And so you're working with them. You're like, yeah, you've talked about this. You shared this with me. Let's think this through together about what is the value for what it is that you need this position to bring for the company. And that helps you start to feel like, okay, we've got a peer here. We've got someone who's going to help us strategize. She's not being difficult. She's just really smart and strategic and really kind of thinking about this, not just for herself, but for the organization. And that's a lot of value. I mean, organizations want to bring people on board that they see as a problem solver, as a collaborator, and you're already starting to show them those skills in the negotiation process. I had a situation where I received an offer, and it was for a particular role where I was able to show them what I would be able to bring to the organization. I said to them, you know, what you've done here is actually illegal. And the way that you've shared this with me, you would never want this to get out into the public, that you do this kind of negotiating for positions. I think you might want to think about approaching this differently. And just by me negotiating back, but also negotiating back, showing the skills that I was actually going to bring to the position, they had nothing but respect for my response to the offer, because I was saving them. I was like, you would never want this to get out into the public, that this is what the way in which you've approached this. This is not the reputation or the brand that you're trying to build for this institution. And so wherever you see those opportunities, not saying you need to, let's just hope that no one ever has a situation like that. But what I want to impress upon us as women is that every moment is an opportunity to share the skills that you're going to bring into the position, even the moment of negotiation. And that's really the message here that I want to deliver there.
So you talked about how timing is everything.
Yes.
So we're in this time, lots of turnover, lots of things happening. How would you advise someone to broach the subject of negotiation with their current employer?
Mm-hmm.
When is the right time in your career to have those conversations with your own company about promotion?
It's a great question. So you heard my story at the very, very, very beginning, where I asked for a promotion and did not happen. They were like, nope, can't do it. And I left. So it's worked for me before. I've had both experiences where it's worked and it hasn't worked. So here's what I've learned from having kind of both sides of this happen to me. So the first time that I did it, I thought I was really prepared. You know, I went in there, I, had, given myself a fancy title and all this stuff. And what I didn't understand was about the question of timing. I had not been in my current position very long. I had not delivered fully on all the things that I needed to deliver in that position. I had not necessarily taken on any significant new role. I had not advised and understood and studied about the kind of hierarchy and the chain within the organization. Those types of things. I was very young and I came in and just thought that I could just, negotiate my way into a promotion without thinking through all of these things. And so when it did work for me the other time, I had been in my role for more than 24 months. I had had plenty of time to learn the role. I had plenty of time to move the needle in some area in the work. I was able to provide even an extra show of excellence, even beyond those kind of 24 months. I didn't ask too soon. I did have the opportunity to have another real offer on the table that I was able to leverage, but I don't think that has to be the case in every situation. I think if you are showing value and that you've given yourself what they love to say in HR, and if there's HR people on the calls, please correct me, but I've been told by HR professionals that it takes a good 23 months for you to really learn your job. So if you're trying to negotiate a promotion before 23 months in a job, you were hired at the wrong level from the beginning. You should have never taken that job. You want to start negotiating a promotion after you've learned your current job, delivered real value in that role, whatever that value is to the company. They should express that, when you come on board, and make sure that the timing is right in terms of budget. You gotta kind of be listening, know what's going on with the budget of the organization, know what's happening within HR in terms of levelings and things that they might be doing within HR. It's very important to just appear to be attuned to what's happening at an organization. If they just did a whole round of layoffs and you're coming in asking for a promotion, you're not really showing good judgment and acumen and intelligence in that moment. So it really is about thinking about the timing and making sure that you've delivered in your current role. And it may take time. So the other thing I would say is, it may be a no, not right now. Well, then your response should be, okay, that's fair. What could it look like in 6 months? What might I do in the next 6 months that will allow for us to have this conversation again, that will lead to a promotion? So don't be discouraged by the no, not right now, but offer an alternative to say, love to take on this project, love to try to do a couple more things here that will really help support this. Love to help you think about, who might step into my role so that that's not leaving a gap. All of those things matter. And if you've thought those things through, I think you have much better success than what I did when I tried to do it a while ago without doing any of that research.
So before we open it up for questions from the audience, I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
With this being Women of UGA Mentorship Mondays, and you talked a lot about being inspired by the people you work for. So what has been some of the best mentorship advice that you've gotten over the years from a female mentor that you'd be willing to share with us?
Sure. So I've had the great fortune of having many female bosses. And, I've never really had a formal relationship saying, oh, you're my mentor, but I love to watch people. And also a very awesome, excellent male boss that I would watch. And I learned a lot from him just by watching how he moves about the organization and the way that he shows up. And one of the things that a mentor told me is really about finding the cookie. I was like, what's that? Finding the cookie. It's like finding that yummy thing that keeps you showing up with excellence in your position. What's that thing in the job, at the organization, that is the piece of the work that just drives you? It's the thing that, I would do this for free because I love this part of the work. This is the stuff that drives me. Attaching onto that as part of the larger scope of your work allows you to show up with excellence, allows people to notice you, allows people to want to bring you onto their team for another project, because it's giving you that opportunity to shine. It's something that you love, something that you're passionate about, something that you're good at. And so that was one of the things that a mentor told me that I really appreciate, because oftentimes we will be in roles, and I'm one of those people who stay a long time. 5 years here, 8 years here, I stay at places, and it can get mundane. But if you're finding that cookie every 6 months, every year of some project that really drives you, it allows for other people to see the greatness in you, that allows for continued career growth and trajectory. And then what we started with, it was someone who said to me, get attached to your purpose. Like, you're not going to ever be fulfilled in your career if you're chasing money and you're not chasing these opportunities that drive you, that gives you such love and clarity. And I've always lived my career that way. I've always focused on what the work is, not necessarily what the salary is going to be at that job. Now, when you get the salary to match the work, that is like the icing on the cake. But for me, it's never been about the salary. And I think those are kind of the two things that I've received in my career that's been super helpful. So yeah, thank you for that
writing
question.
Notes here about finding the cookie. I love that. Okay, this is when we invite everyone to ask questions. I know we already have a couple in the chat, but please drop your questions for Germonique in there. So our first question is, how should we respond when an employer asks us not to disclose our salary to colleagues? Your advice there.
Wow, I'd be wondering why. First of all, I'd be wondering why. I would ask the question. I think I would wonder why myself. Then if you feel like you've got that kind of candor with your HR department or with your boss, I would ask the question, if people are all being paid equitably, then what is the concern? And I think you can do that in a way that is professional. You could do that in a way that's not antagonistic. I'm not advocating for anyone to pick a fight, that's unnecessary. But I think that giving them something to think about how that is being perceived by its workforce. When you're telling your workforce that you can't disclose the salaries, then they need to understand, well, what kind of culture are you creating as an institution, and how is that being perceived by the employees? It's going to create this level of uncertainty and distrust that there may be people being paid unequally. If you're doing your due diligence as an organization and you're paying everybody what they're worth based on, all the different factors that line up so that there's equitable in pay, whether you're a man or a woman or whatever, then there should be no concerns for an institution. So that's probably what I would do in a way that is professional and in a way that is seen as, I'm thinking about the organization in whatever way that you can make this feel like I'm really thinking about the organization here. I think this could create a really tough culture here. If people are being told they can't share their salary, it just starts to bring up things for all of us to say, well, maybe things aren't being fair. So that's what I would do for sure.
So it sounds like Allison in the room is in the middle of a negotiation, and she has a question for you about, she's a contract employee, and she wants to go in and ask for a certain number increase over the base salary to account for not having benefits.
Okay.
But she's saying that this number seems huge to her, but that would put her in her salary range. So what would your advice there be?
Just so I understand, she says the number feels huge, like what she's asking for feels huge?
Yes.
So I would say never feel like you're asking for too much money. If you don't ask, you don't know. You'd be surprised. I think we oftentimes think, oh my God, I'm asking for the world. You would be surprised. I go in high. I go in high. And so I would encourage you to feel comfortable and confident, like I said earlier, about one, you deserve it. If I'm sure you did your research. I'm just going to assume all the factors. You've done the research. You've figured out, based on benefits, what you would be missing and what salary you need to meet your needs, and then deliver on that salary. You put it out there. They could only negotiate back. And so it's always better to go in high, because at the end of the day, it's negotiation, and you may not end up getting the amount that you asked for, but hopefully it still puts you to the range of a salary that you're comfortable with. So I would say go for it with confidence, like be confident about it, act like you own it, act like you deserve it, because you do, and then just work from there.
Jennifer and Renee have some questions about applying, interviewing. So question one is, if you're applying for a job and you go back to the job site and you were interviewed for this position, but you weren't selected and the position's now reposted, is that a sign to you that you weren't the right fit, or is it just the system reloading? I'm sure it's different for every company, but if you have any experience with that. And then Renee is asking, if you went through the whole process and didn't get selected, what's the best way to respond and move forward? So a little bit about how to negotiate companies when they're reposting positions that you may have interviewed for, and then how do you move forward with that company after not being selected?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like in the first scenario that, if it's the exact same scope of the job, sometimes what happens in companies is they put a job out there, they start interviewing candidates, and in the process, they realize, one, the candidate pool is not quite there. So that happens all the time. And so you don't get a call back because they didn't feel like they had the right pool. And so they will repost it. Sometimes they repost it with the tweak. So you kind of got to look through just to make sure that it's the exact same job, because sometimes through the interview process, they're like, you know what? We really need somebody who brings this skill as well. It's a learning process for companies as well. They start to see what the talent pool is out there. They say, you know what, we really need X. And so they repost with a tweak. So that might be the situation there. But if you've seen the repost, then it really has been a decision that the talent pool just wasn't there. And then in terms of moving on after you've been through an interview process and you don't get the offer, it's like networking. So if you feel like you created a rapport with the hiring manager, even if you didn't get the offer, always send a note of thanks, didn't work out this time, but please keep me in mind for something in the future. Would love, love the company. Sorry it didn't work out, but if there's another opportunity that I feel like I'm a better fit, keep those lines of communications open, because you just never know. You would be surprised that I've heard this happening to people where those people become resources for you down the line, where they're like, you know what, you weren't a fit for this, but hey, I saw this job. So see that as a networking opportunity. I would definitely reach back out and send a note of thanks and let them know that you're still very much interested in working for that company in some capacity down the road.
So going back to this, not disclosing salary,
Yes.
and this may be different in some laws in California and Georgia, but a lot of times job applications now require you to even submit your application to put in a number. So how, and I'm getting a lot of questions in the chat about this. So how would you handle that when you can't put a word in? You can't say, like
you can't say negotiable, or you can't say
negotiable
competitive and all that.
You have to put a number in, and you can't, and lots of times they won't just let you put a bunch of zeros or X's. So any advice there on how to handle that?
Yeah. So I've seen that situation happen, and that's a tough one. And so here's what I would say. This is where you got to get your sleuth on. You got to get your sleuth on and find someone in the organization, find someone, a hiring manager or something. If you really want that job, but you don't want to put a number in out there, try to, as much as you can, avoid going through that online only process, but finding a connection within the institution that you can get your application in through a different channel. Sometimes you can email an application into they have two versions, right? There's the online application version that you submit, and there's sometimes, not all the time, you could submit your resume and cover letter and avoid that. Avoid at all costs putting a number in, because it is strictly used to weed people out. I mean, that's the bottom line. It is strictly used to weed people out, and also to determine whether or not they're able to get you at a much lower salary rate. So, but at the end of the day, if there is no other way, no other way for you to get your application in other than through this online system, you've got to put in the dollar amount that you absolutely is your, best salary amount, and then add 10% to that, because they're going to negotiate you down. And then if it was meant to be, it was meant to be. And that's the bottom line. If it was meant to be, it was meant to be. But at least you can be clear in your conscience to know that I didn't lowball myself, that they knew that this is what I was going to require in terms of my salary for this role, and really hope that your application and resume speaks for itself. But I would say that your first line of defense is finding someone within that company that you can work through to get your application in without having to go through that online system, because they have set those things up now where it's like, you got to put in a number. We're not going to let you up in here. That definitely is kind of a way that a lot of these hiring managers are using that to weed people out. I found my job at the Lucas Museum on LinkedIn. I'm just going to put it out there.
Okay, so Lucy and Melissa have a couple questions about negotiating your salary within your current organization. So one is asking, do you wait on your performance review to ask for that salary increase, or should you let the leader know before you go into that? And the other one's saying she's been there for a couple of years, she absolutely loves it, but she's starting to get recruited by other places that are offering a lot more money. So I think those are two great scenarios to kind of talk about when it's the right time to negotiate within your own organization.
Yeah, I would say on the first one, if you have touch bases with your boss, whether it's those quarterly ones before the big performance review, you should start to let them know that this is something that you aspire to do, is to move up in the organization. I wouldn't hit them with it in the 1 year annual, but that's where you kind of close the deal, is in the 1 year annual. But go ahead and start to indicate it in conversation. I delivered on this, big project, and, I've gotten a lot of great feedback, and, it's just, one of the many things that ways in which I'm hoping that you see that I'm ready to move up in my role. Look for these moments where you are shining and getting really great feedback, to use that as a moment to say, hey, I'm really feeling good about where I am in the institution in terms of this being a great place and a great fit for me, but I'd love to explore how I can grow, and, just start to plant the seed. But then absolutely, I think the expectation typically is they'll use those annual performance reviews as the moment to say, what do I got to do, in the next 3 months to go ahead and get this promotion? And then what was the second question? I'm sorry, I forgot. I got so into the first one.
No. So there's leveraging within do you bring it up at the annual review, and then it's when you're getting recruited by other companies?
Yes.
When is the right time but you're happy where you are, but when is the right time to be like, hi, they're offering me this, and this to come, work over here?
So I've been in that situation. I've been in that scenario, that exact situation. If you love where you work, you absolutely should let your bosses know that, hey, I absolutely love it here, but I've been getting recruited for some other positions. I want to stay here. But under this circumstance, I know that I am worth X amount of dollars on the market. Can we have a conversation about me getting a promotion of some sort? I've been here for 8 years. I've been here for 4 years. It's been a while since I've gotten any kind of a promotion. And here's all the research that I'm seeing in terms of my salary on the market. Absolutely use these indicators of your worth as an opportunity to bring that back to your current employer. Now, here's the rub. Here's the situation here, though. You got to be ready to potentially walk away if you don't get what you want. So that's the thing. Like, if they say, you know what, we can't do it, you may want to take one of those other jobs. Make sure you've got one of those other jobs that you really, really love, kind of locked and loaded. Or you can say, if they say no, then maybe you really want to stay and say, well, can we talk about how this can happen in the next several months or something? I'd really like to figure that out, and that will buy you some time. So it's not like you're just taking the no and you're just kind of stuck in your role and in your salary, but you've posited it to say, can we talk about this in 3 more months? Let's figure a plan out. And during that 3 months, you're also lining yourself up to being able to actually really walk away the next time. So give yourself a little runway, but absolutely use this as an opportunity to start to have a conversation about salary.
Okay, we have about 3 to 5 minutes left, and I have 3 really good questions. So I'm going to kind of speed round these in here to you.
Okay, I'll answer fast.
Okay, so you talked about not giving, the salary. I think salary is definitely a big conversation here. But when you're in negotiations and they ask you for your current salary, how does that question impact the salary negotiation process? So, that can be if it's a big gap, especially because how do you use that if someone asks you your current salary when negotiating your next one?
I don't give it. I never give it. And I've literally been in this situation. I refuse to give them the salary. I said, my current salary has no bearing on this role. Bottom line, I could actually be making more money, and I've decided to take a step down. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yes. People always assume that salary is about you trying to go into a new job to make more money. Some people might want to make less money. They don't, they don't want to work as hard. They've decided to downshift in their career, and they know that they're taking. So it honestly has no bearing on the role. It's like, I said my salary is competitive, but honestly, I don't believe, it's not even honestly, it has no bearing on this current position. What is it that you are looking to pay the best candidate for this job? You and I are here negotiating. You've offered me the job. I'm a perfect fit here. I never give, I just don't give the number. I said, and they will give up. Honestly, they will give up if they want you for this position. They will try hard. I've been in this situation where you're like, do I tell them? I held strong. It's hard. I'm not gonna lie, it's hard, but don't give the salary. Continue to say, what is it that you want to pay for this position? Start being that peer. What's the budget? What's the scope? Go back to the semantics of the role. What is it that you feel like you need for this salary? And here's something that and I'm so glad my girlfriend's on this call, is something that she and I talk about. I always say this as my last thing when I'm in an interview with someone. I always say this. I say, what concerns do you have about my background that would make you not want to give me this job? You put it on them. Is there anything about my background and skills that would make you decide I'm not the best fit for this job? And when I ask that question, I always get the answer, actually, there's nothing. Or they will say, you know what? I'm a little bit concerned that you don't have enough experience working for large size companies. And then it allows you the opportunity in that moment to address their concern, because now you know what it is that they're concerned about. And then you can say, actually, I worked for years at such and such company, and there was 10,000 employees, and I was able to do, and they're like, oh, wow, gosh, I forgot that was on your resume. And then they have nothing. They have nothing that they have to hold against you. So please, ladies, remember that one. Put it to them. And then you have that as your additional leverage in the negotiation, because then you can say, there's nothing that I don't bring for this role. So now it's really about semantics, and it's about what you're willing to pay for my skills. All right, let's move to the next question. I know we got a lot.
Okay.
Sorry for the long answer.
No, that's a great advice. Love it. Okay, so if you are starting a job and you very quickly realize, like, this is not for me, so you're starting to apply for other jobs. It happens. So how would you answer the question in a application? Why are you looking to leave your current company so soon, or in an interview?
Yeah. I feel like we're in a climate now where it's not so bad of a situation, because people are just kind of like readjusting and making changes. There's just lots of stuff going on. So this is probably the best time to be able to say, hey, I got there, it wasn't a right fit. But I think, honestly, I don't think it's such a hang up anymore, in my opinion. If you can really articulate that you're one of those type of people that is really clear about what your needs are and what the company's needs are, and that you are responsible enough, smart enough, respectful enough of the organization to say, you know what, it just wasn't a really good fit. I got there and realized that they really needed someone with X, and that's not really what I want or was able to deliver. And so rather wasting anyone's time, I decided it was best for us to part ways. Love the company, they are awesome, but I just want to make sure they've got the right person. And if they're concerned about that happening with you, I said, one of the things that I hope that we're able to do in this process is really to understand the scope of the role. So.
Okay, great. Okay, last question that we have time for today you talked a lot about researching.
Yes.
So you walk in with your competitive salary. Are there any websites or tools you'd recommend around, researching that competitive pay that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all the ones that we all know, I can't even think of the ones, but I'll tell you one that I use really often in the nonprofit field. So if you work in nonprofit, which is where my career has mostly been, there is a thing called Charity Navigator. All major kind of national nonprofit organizations list the executive salaries, and you can get a sense of salary. If you're a public entity, the 501c3, the 1099 forms are online. You can actually go and see the 1099 forms, and you can see the salaries of the executives. And you can use that at least as a benchmark. Even if you're an entry-level position, you can find the budget of an organization, often looking at their, on their website. You can see the financials, so you'll know how large an organization is. You can often find the salaries of top executives, and then you can use that as a way to kind of benchmark salaries from there. Network, talk to people in HR, There's all these, I don't know why I'm blanking on that website where you have the jobs and the salaries. Glassdoor has great salary information on there that you can use as another resource. But also talk to people who are kind of in the field. I do that as well. I'm like, hey, thinking about this job here. What do you guys know is kind of the pay range for a position of that level? So, I mean, research comes from all over the place. It's network, it's friends, it's alumni association, career centers at your university. So there's lots of places that you can kind of go. But Glassdoor is a good spot, and Charity Navigator.
Wonderful. So I know we could keep having this conversation for probably the next 3 hours, but thank you so much for sharing all this wonderful knowledge. And I'm going to turn it back over to Brandy to close us out.
Awesome. Thank you. I know that people have their emojis or their hand claps or whatever. If you want to come off mute, I just cannot. I mean, I was taking so many notes during that session. Thank you so very much. I mean, everyone agrees, just if you guys want a hand clap or like do the, I mean, I cannot even, such valuable information, so applicable to what we're all doing, experiencing right now. And the only thing I can say is I wish you had been a speaker when I was 23 years old. So thanks for that. So thank you so much for that and helping us learn how to advocate for ourselves and for our careers. So what happens next, guys, is we are going to have us divide up into breakout rooms where you can do further discussion in smaller groups and hopefully get to know people that are a part of Women of UGA even better, some of the alumni. I want to just share with you, we've got 2 more Mentorship Mondays coming up, one on October 18th and one on November 15th. And all of our Mentorship Mondays are at this noon Eastern, and it's the same format, 1 hour of a speaker or a panel. And then we'll have the breakouts after that. So our next session, October 18th, is going to be on building your personal brand. And one of our signature events will be in person this year, as opposed to being virtual like last year. And that is our annual Cookies and Cocoa with Harry Dog. It's your opportunity to get that Christmas card photo that you need and make cookies with the kids and make hot chocolate and all that kind of fun stuff. That date, guys, please put it on your calendar, is November 14th, and it's here in Atlanta. So we hope to see many of you there with your families. And this is an event that does sell out. So if you're not a member of the Women of UGA Insider newsletter, you'll get the very first dibs on that when that email comes out. So as soon as it comes out, make sure you sign up, because it does sell out, and it is timed to make sure we can get the families in there on a consistent basis without too much overcrowding. So make sure you're staying connected with everything UGA by visiting the calendar on the alumni website, because there's some great events coming up. Don't forget about our Black Alumni Homecoming coming up on October 16th. And we've got UGA night at the Braves game on September 30th. And there's a chapter near you, no matter where you are in the US or around the world. I'm certain that there's a chapter near you, an alumni chapter, that's hosting a game watching party or having networking opportunities for you. So make sure you're following UGA Alumni Association and Women of UGA on your social media, on Instagram and Facebook. And I just encourage you guys to participate on those. We love to hear about your, what's going on with you in your life. It could be everything, like I posted last week, of like, hey, what purses can we take into the stadium, to, maybe your company's hiring and you're looking for, great people to apply. So whatever you want to post, we want this page to be very, we've got almost 2,000 members on the Facebook page. We want to be very active and driven by you and get that participation. So at this time, we're going to give those who need to depart a few moments to do so before we open up the breakout rooms. Everyone will be randomly assigned to enjoy a discussion on the breakout room in your, and you can share your biggest takeaways, and we'll be doing that from now until 1:30. So most importantly, thank you so much on behalf of the Women of UGA. Thank you for being here. And most importantly, go Dogs.